Stay until the end of the video. Yeah? Don't fucking leave. We got analytics. We know what you up to.
Welcome back to Unfolded, the show that discusses the latest trends in business, tech, and culture. My name's Joe, and I'm really interested in how businesses make money.
Hey, I'm Karan, and I love businesses of the future.
And I'm Marco, and I'm really interested in technology and design.
So without further ado, let's get started. And we are back. As normal, we're going to start off the show with a Startup Spotlight, which is our chance to share this week's startup with you guys and have a bit of a discussion about what we think. So taking it away for this week, we have Karan.
Cool. So the startup of the week for me has to be this company called Starship Technologies.
Okay.
First of all, that name is amazing. Being a Star Trek fan, having the name Starship Technologies is just awesome. I'm looking for a grad job after I graduate, so if you want to hire me. But getting into what they actually do. So you know how everybody's trying to do drone deliveries and self-driving car deliveries and all that sort of stuff? What Starship Technologies does is they have a ground-based drone.
Okay.
So just a tiny little robot which you leave on the sidewalk, and it can automatically navigate the footpath and make deliveries. At the moment, they're doing food deliveries in London, Estonia, and some parts in America. But I need to show you the video so you can actually understand what it is.
Okay, cool.
The co-founders of Skype are launching a fleet of delivery robots that drive on
Oh,
sidewalks.
I've seen something like that.
Yeah, so you would have seen this because Just Eat in the UK partners with them and they're doing a test. The interesting part about this is that it started by ex-Skype founders. Ex-Skype co-founder, and one of them was the lead developer in Skype. So they already have that mindset to disrupt. And especially they come from Estonia, which is on the leading edge of technological innovation right now. As you can see, this is a normal ground-based delivery robot. At the moment, it's only limited to a short radius in terms of traveling, so that it can't actually be dispatched from a warehouse. It has to be quite close to the point of delivery, which is why it only does food deliveries right now. So Just Eat in the UK and DoorDash in the US. But the future for this is quite promising because everything is becoming more and more on demand. So I can imagine a future where retailers offer same hour, same day deliveries, and they just pop the parcel into the robot and off it goes. The interesting fact about this is that they actually had a partnership with Mercedes in 2016, and they came up with something really cool. So I'll show you here. They partnered on a van. So if you see, this van just carries a bunch of these Starship robots inside it.
No way.
And what's going to happen is that this van would drive into the city, park at a central spot, and these just come out in a swarm.
That must be terrifying to look at.
Yeah, I know.
It's like a clown car of...
It's like the start of iRobot.
Yeah. So you can see Mercedes is quite interested in this kind of future, and they also invested $17.2 million in the company. My concern with this would be regulations, because in the last episode we discussed OFO and bike sharing and those kind of things. So I don't know if you knew this, but the government in certain places, the councils, they had issues with these kind of bikes which were just left on the road because they were causing a nuisance. And those concerns are likely to arise as this keeps growing as well, because this is going to start taking up the space of passerbys, right, on the sidewalk. So I'm just wondering, how are we going to coexist with this? Are we going to have special lanes, or do we just get oblivious to the fact, right? We just accept them as members of society in a way, and just think they're invisible, right?
So where do they sit when they're not being used? They just park up at the side of the road, or?
No, so at the moment, how it works is somebody actually brings them to a vicinity where they can actually start going autonomous. In the UK, how it works is there's a human engineer walking behind it, monitoring its movement, and also ensuring that it doesn't get stolen.
By the time these things are mainstream, maybe the van's going to be autonomous as well, so it will automatically follow a certain loop where it knows that these little drones are supposed to be heading.
Yeah, which is why I think it's also an interesting partnership from the perspective of Mercedes, because they can use some of this self-driving tech from the robot into their own vehicles, right? Just Eat recently announced that they're going to start investing in their own supply chain, in their own delivery network. So at the moment, how Just Eat works is that they only connect you with the restaurant, right? They are essentially an online food court. They only take you to the restaurant, and then the restaurant has to figure out how they make the delivery to you.
Right.
But they announced a significant investment in delivery technology. And I'm just wondering what they're trying to do, because they already have a partnership with Starship. So are they trying to create their own version of this? Are they trying to go all in and partner with this and create their own fleet of these robots? I don't know.
Me neither. The actual routing, is it like a predefined route that if I am the person working on that delivery piece of software, I know to pre-program it to take this certain forward 5 meters, take a right, but bear in mind that something might be coming across the road? Has it got that kind of analytics built into the camera?
Yeah, so it currently has a map of the area inside it, which is again another challenge, because it would have to start mapping all these locations, right, to know what's the most efficient route to take.
Sorry, I was just gonna say, what if there's like construction on the road that's not on the map, and then
Yeah.
it's an obstacle for it? So does it just stop and it can't go anywhere?
How intelligent are these things?
Yeah, so it's quite funny, because I was watching the video, right, and someone tried to prank it.
Yeah.
So this person went and stood in front of the robot, and what the robot does is it waits for 2 minutes, hoping that the human's going to move. But then,
2 minutes.
like, I don't know, like a few minutes, right? And then it goes like,
Yeah, I was gonna say.
and then it just makes the sound, and it goes like, "Excuse me, can you please move?" And it just says that because it has a loudspeaker built in. And then if you still decide not to move, it just starts like pulling back, and it's like, you know what, I'm just, it just goes.
Yeah.
Fantastic. There's the Roombas. They're quite good.
Yeah.
Surely this could be as good as that and just move around the person immediately instead of waiting for 2 minutes for someone.
Yeah. How it works in the UK right now is that there's a human controller walking behind it to help it navigate. But in Estonia, it's completely autonomous. Well, I say completely, but I'd say 99% autonomous, because there's still human controllers who are remote, but they're still monitoring it from the cameras.
Okay.
So they can jump in if needed.
I was just wondering, yeah, because Roomba's got the technology, so I think the technology should be there in a way. Actually, why isn't Roomba getting in on this?
That's a very good point, actually.
They should be getting on this.
Yeah. Yeah, that's a really good idea, because Roomba already has the expertise, right?
Yeah.
Rumor, can we just, for people in the audience that don't know, I don't know.
Yeah, so Roomba is a vacuuming company. Is it just vacuuming, I think? Or is it technology? So they make these autonomous vacuum cleaners. So they go, you've probably seen them, they're usually round. There's a lot of knockoffs as well. You can buy on Amazon, probably cheaper than the original ones. And they just go around your house, they vacuum. You can the more expensive they are, the more sophisticated they are. So you can program certain time. They know how to go back to their charging hub, their charging base. And yeah, they're just like an autonomous robot vacuum cleaner.
It's really cool.
Yeah, it's just quite funny, because it's just like a small disc that's just moving around your house,
Yeah.
and automatically cleaning everything.
Yeah.
It's cool. Yeah.
Careful where you step. Wicked. Thanks for sharing that, Karen. That's been our Startup Spotlight. Next, we're going to move on to the second half of the show, which is our deep dive. Each of us has brought a story from this or last week's news. We're going to share it and have a bit of a discussion. So taking it away for us today is Marco.
Yes, so my story is probably the biggest and most controversial this week, and probably in a long time, to be honest. It is the Facebook Cambridge Analytica, that whole controversy, which you probably already heard about, but if you didn't know, there's been a lot of political talk about the influence that Cambridge Analytica might have had in the Trump campaign and a bunch of other political campaigns. I don't want to get too much into the politics. I want to talk about the backlash, but first, let's get what Cambridge Analytica is exactly. So a couple of words here. So let's try and process them.
Pick up the buzzwords.
So Cambridge Analytica, and this is on Wikipedia, is a privately held company that combines data mining, data brokerage, I hope I'm pronouncing that right, and data analysis with strategic communication for the electoral process.
Bit by bit. So data brokerage.
Data brokerage.
Buying and selling people's data.
That's kind of what it sounds like.
Yeah.
So people backlashing all over this. I mean, this company already sounds pretty shady, and they're using pretty big words, which usually means they're kind of trying to hide something or what they do. So they've been blamed with possibly persuading voters to vote, for example, for Trump. But it's not the first time. That's the thing about Cambridge Analytica. It is not the first time they've been involved in controversies. So if you go into the Wikipedia page, you can read loads of them. There's a bit about Brexit as well. So if you're on Twitter, you probably saw hashtag delete Facebook all over the place. And that includes WhatsApp's co-founder, Brian Acton, telling people to leave Facebook as well, which is interesting because WhatsApp was bought by Facebook, in case you didn't know, for $19 billion a couple of years back. I mean, we both have experience in the industry. And what I want to say is that, again, if you're considering deleting Facebook, then go ahead. If you're deleting it because of this controversy, then go ahead. But I mean, if you're doing that, you might as well delete your Instagram, your Twitter. I think you might as well toss your credit cards, your bank cards away, and any loyalty cards that you have with any store.
Just stop using the internet. Right?
Stop using the internet. Stop going outside and buying stuff with cards. Just use purely cash. I mean, that's probably why a lot of illegal activities are done in cash. Not that I would know. I'm just saying. I recently watched Breaking Bad, so that's probably why. But yeah, in one way or another, companies are selling your data. I mean, think about how does Google make money? Yeah, I just want to ask your opinions on this. Why is there such a big backlash? When you're online, your information is already basically out there. So,
I mean, the reason I think why this is blown so much out of proportion is the fact that it's speculated that it swayed the results of the election, and that's a very big thing. So normally, concerns about privacy, they're all out there. Right? People know that their data is being collected, and there are like different think tanks and different groups that are trying to tackle that. But this is a big influence, okay, and it's kind of changed the direction in which a country is going, potentially, speculatively. And I think that's why there's the biggest, that's why there's such a huge reaction. And also it's about how they've collected the data. So I think it's less about Cambridge Analytica and what they did, but more about Facebook and how they approach their users' privacy. Because I was watching a video on how they actually collected this amount of data. And the whistleblower, so I forgot his name, but the whistleblower from Cambridge Analytica, he started explaining how they actually got all this data. And what they've done is, on Facebook sometimes you have these apps that do a personality quiz or these different apps that they give you some result based on some information that you give them.
And then it's really viral because they share it to your friends page and then they do the app, right?
Exactly. Yeah, but the interesting part about what Cambridge Analytica did is that if you took the personality quiz using their app, your friends didn't have to take the quiz. They automatically collected the information of your friends as well. And in some cases, even private messages. Speculation, but that's what the whistleblower has come out and said.
Wow.
Which is really creepy. So they already know what kind of statuses you write, what's your language, what's your pictures, what locations you're going at. And even if they can get the content of your messages, that's just crazy.
But then again, with cookies on websites, everything you do online is in a way tracked.
Yeah.
They know all this. There's a lot of data online, and that's how marketing. There's a lot of money in marketing online, and that's how Google has so much money. Yeah, by going on websites, they're tracking. By opening applications on your phone when you have location services, apps know where you are, and that data is going somewhere. If you read carefully a lot of terms and agreements that you always agree, as all of us do, there's always a little bit of hidden information in there that kind of is making you allow them to use that data one way or another.
The backlash for this has been so severe that it's wiped out about 50 billion off of Facebook's market cap in the past few days. And Joe, I think you had Facebook shares.
Hello, darkness, my old friend.
So, how's that going?
Yeah, it feels great. Feels great to be an all-time low. I think the headline in the Financial Times today was Facebook is at its lowest valuation since IPO. Not lowest by market cap in terms of number of shares times the share price, but lowest in terms of the price to earnings ratio. So the amount it's worth compared to what you're paying for it. So crazy. This is one of the really interesting it's obviously a very public case, but it's something that the public and the government have been worried about for quite a while. They talk about a monopoly being bad for society, right? So when a company has too much power, they're bound to exploit that power. In this case, Facebook has too much power over the way that it can collect data about its users. But then from the flip side of that, Facebook tells you all of this when you sign up. So it's an interesting grey area between what's legally allowed and what's morally right.
Deep down, we all know everything's being tracked, but we just don't expect to be targeted this way. And Cambridge Analytica clearly said that they can use this data to sway your decisions based on what's the kind of statuses that you're putting and what's the kind of messaging that you prefer. And they have predictions on how many times they need to reach out to you with a certain message before you change your mind.
That is scary. Just on the point you mentioned earlier about data and data collection, they often say that with products like Facebook, if something is free, you are the product. So, I mean, that's something to bear in mind.
Yeah.
And we saw that actually quite recently. I think it was a few months ago. Strava. Have you guys heard of it? Strava.
I have not heard of it.
Yeah, so they're a really, really cool company. And essentially, if you buy any wearable technology now, you can connect it to Strava, which is the social media site for athletes.
Okay.
So if I want to find out, say I'm really into jogging, and I want to find out cool new routes near me, I can connect and follow people that I want to either run the same route as or maybe just get a bit of inspiration for my next workout, and it tracks that and I can upload it. So it's like a really nice platform to share your progress. What happened with them 2 or 3 months ago was that there was an Australian, I think he was a PhD student, and he was doing his dissertation or his final piece of work on location tracking in the wearables market. And what he found was, by looking at the publicly available information on Strava's site, he could see a heat map, a live heat map of a underground and top secret Cypriot military base.
Yes, yeah.
So it was completely under wraps, and you could see, if you were clever enough about how you scrape the data, because people then use this data, they could see clear behavioral patterns between quite senior members of the military, I think it was an RAF base, and at certain times in the day where they would likely to be placed. Just think about how scary that is.
Yeah.
And if you can target a specific individual like that live, I mean, the world we live in.
It's a digital world. It's scary. We're all pretty vulnerable in this world, and that's just kind of how it is now. Is there a reason for this big backlash? Of course there is, but that's just how the world is right now. You can't really believe that your data is really protected, I guess. It's just, you put so much information out there, unless you're not on social media or anything, you're pretty much, if you are, you're pretty much exposed to everything.
Privacy is the price we pay for convenience, right?
Yeah.
Cool. So that wraps up the first story in our deep dive. Next up, I guess I'll go.
Yeah, go for it. Yeah.
Awesome. So last week, if you remember, we spoke about Ofo, which is the bike sharing company. So essentially that plays on the sharing economy, which is I don't have to physically own an item to then be able to use it. It's like a pay-as-you-go service model. So what we're going to be talking about today is slightly similar, but also a little bit different. So Apple have recently acquired a company called Texture. Now, Texture is a magazine subscription service that's purely digital. So you have access, if you subscribe to Texture, I think it's, at the moment, it might only be available in the US, but it's for $10 a month, $9.99.
Yep.
You have access to 200 magazines at the press of a button on your iPad, Android, wherever you go. So you can clearly see the value there. Now, at the same time, Netflix, a very similar model where I can rent a movie, it's a subscription service rather. Is this the way that these companies are moving towards, and where does that balance of power lie? Surely, if Amazon Prime are getting in the game with all of their original content, and by original we mean you can only view it on that platform, which is why Netflix has doubled in the last year in terms of share price, is this the way that all of these content companies are going? A subscription that opens up everything on offer for you to pay a set price a month. Who are the winners and losers there?
I mean, what I find interesting is that you describe these companies as content companies. Just think about that, right? Apple is not primarily a content company, but they're shifting towards this. And I think that's the value that they're going for. They're trying to become as like this auxiliary service provider in addition to their hardware, because Apple's value is in the ecosystem, right? They don't want you to go to Netflix. They don't want you to go to Amazon. They want you to be in iTunes and use Apple Music and just use all of their services. I think this is part of Apple's larger, longer term strategy to become a content powerhouse. They've already acquired a studio in Hollywood recently. They're already working on making their own original shows. Planet of the Apps is one of them, which is on Apple Music. And I'm just wondering, what's their angle with this? Because Marco, I know you told me that they have an education event coming up on March 27th.
Yeah.
Right. And if you saw the theme on that, it's all about like pencil and iPad and students.
Yeah, that is true. They might talk about that in the event, actually. So did you say it was magazines or
Yeah, so over 200 magazines.
just magazines?
Just magazines.
Okay. So I think Apple definitely wants to get in on and take a little bit of a bite out of Netflix and of the market share of that industry, of the whole entertainment industry. They've seen what Amazon has done. They've seen what Netflix has done. And I think there's no denying that Apple is trying to get in there. I mean, with original programming such as Planet of the Apps and what was that James Corden show? The Drive...
Carpool Karaoke.
Carpool Karaoke. Not 100% sure what Apple's trying to do there. Because they have their news app, but that's news. A lot of other magazine apps on Apple. I mean, I don't know if anyone...
Newsstand, I think.
They have a newsstand, okay.
Yeah.
I don't know. They've been acquiring a few companies lately. They acquired Shazam as well.
Yeah.
I just can't see the angle with Texture because I actually had no idea that Apple had acquired them. And I'm trying to think of it. What are they trying to do with magazines? And I don't know if you have more insight on...
Yeah, sure. A really, really interesting fact was that Apple's second largest source of income across the board. Think about all the products that Apple does. Does iPhone, does iPad, Macs. Its second largest source of income is its services business. So that includes things like the iCloud, Apple Music. It's going to include Texture. So although Apple already offers news in an app, now it's able to monetize on every single time somebody downloads or uses magazines or any written journalism through an iPhone.
Yeah. Fun fact, actually, Apple services business can be a standalone Fortune 100 company.
That's mad, isn't it?
Yeah.
And the only thing that tops that is the selling of its iPhones. That is still the leader. But on top of iPads, iPod Touches, and AirPods, the earphones combined.
It's crazy.
Yeah. I'm trying to process why they bought Texture.
Yeah, you know what I think it is? Because the last time they had an event that's focused on education, what they did was they launched iBooks Part 2. So they launched iBooks 2 and they launched this thing called iAuthor, I think, is what it's called, which is their platform for making it easy for people to create textbooks. And I think that's their play here. So they have another learning focused event coming up. I'm thinking this is something they tie into that textbook kind of platform, or maybe educational magazines like New Scientist and Economist and that kind of thing. That's the only tie I can see here. I'm maybe short-sighted.
So does anyone know if the publishing business is doing well digitally?
Yeah, I mean, I know Jeff Bezos of Amazon, he acquired the Washington Post.
That's true.
And that's a primarily print business. So I think he's trying to revolutionize that.
That was quite recently. Yeah. And I wanted to mention Amazon, actually, because I didn't know until today when I was looking a bit further into this, that Amazon, actually, AWS, Amazon Web Services, is the service base, the online cloud storage for Netflix's entire content base. So think about that from like a competitive point of view.
Yeah.
Amazon Prime Video, Netflix, leaders in the race for getting eyeballs on their online and exclusive content. Why would they? Well, actually, it's because Amazon makes hundreds of millions of dollars a year out of this, and it'd be a bit like Samsung when iPhone asked for them to build a chip for their phone, as they have been doing since the release of the 5S, I believe, and still for the iPhone X. They're making billions out of
iPhone 10.
iPhone 10. They're making billions out of providing this, so why wouldn't they? So just to wrap it up then, guys, so Apple acquired Texture. What does that mean for the industry of digital journalism, and what are we going to see next? Because these big companies are on a bit of an acquisition spree at the minute. So that was my story for today. Karen, I think you're going to finish us off. Oh, God.
Oh, my God.
I realised as soon as I said that.
Oh, my God.
Really sorry to everybody that witnessed that.
Please don't click away. I'm not going to do that.
So if we pretend that didn't happen, Karen is going to round up today's show and definitely not finish us off with his story for today. Karen, take it away.
So my story this week comes on a bit more serious note. It's about the Uber self-driving car accident that happened on Sunday night. What happened was one of the cars was out on a test ride and it struck a passerby, and unfortunately she passed away. And this is really unprecedented in the world of self-driving cars, because there have been plenty of accidents before, but there's never been a fatality. And people are not quite sure how to react to this. Who do we blame, and what's the regulation about this? Who do we punish? All those things. So the police chief from Arizona, he's reviewed the footage, and there's only been a preliminary comment that's made as of now, because there's not enough information to make a decision on who's to be blamed for this. But they said that it is plausible that the car did not have enough time to stop, because when the lady was crossing the road, she was in a really dimly lit median on the road. So there are few explanations, right? It can be that the car's sensor did not anticipate her coming out of the shadows. But if you think about it, the self-driving cars have sensors which are made to detect people even if there's darkness. So that's something that's been floating around. And there's also a discussion that the lady, she crossed abruptly, and she crossed suddenly, so that even if it was a human driver, or if there was a self-driving car driver, there was no stopping. And it's just been unsettling. So the city of Boston, for example, has suspended all self-driving car trials that were going on in their city. Other states and cities haven't really taken such drastic actions. But it still really makes you think, because everyone knew that this was coming at some point. This is going to happen, and now that it's happened, what do we do, and how do we react?
Yeah, where's the like morality in a virtual machine that decides, or even if it did make that decision, by the sound of it didn't have time to make that decision.
Yeah.
A lot of the experts, from videos I've watched and articles I've read, would argue that actually the reasoning and logic behind a machine and the ability to react to a situation like that is far superior to a human. Just the way that it can process information and react. But as you mentioned, I mean, how many people, without disregarding the life of the individual which was lost, how many people are killed in car accidents, I mean, in a city every week?
Yeah.
Which feels awful to say, and I don't want everybody to take that in the wrong way, but actually this is a fact of being on the road.
Yeah, so that's an argument that people have put forth, but then the counter argument to that is that the whole point to have self-driving cars is to avoid that, right? So you have all this technology in the car. What's the point if it can't stop?
Well, I mean, I don't think you can always be 100% sure that this isn't going to happen, because it's bound to happen at one point. A lot of factors can go into why this specific case happened. And in life, I don't think you can be 100% sure that something isn't going to happen.
Yeah. I don't mean to be like the Luddite here or the technological apologist, but yeah, those are just the two sides, right? And there have been a lot of people coming out and saying, oh, why do we need self-driving cars? We're not ready to test them yet. And this now imposes significant barriers to how we're going to start testing them, because cities are now going to be very reserved about how they allow people to start testing the self-driving technology, because how do they know that it's completely safe or very safe, right? How do they measure that?
You got to look at it in a way that an open view about the whole case here, about how many lives are being saved because we're using a technology like this. But I see a problem in there is that who is going to be blamed if they find out that this is the car's fault. When it's a driver, you have someone to blame. You have someone who's at fault for being the killer.
Yeah, that's what makes the situation so unique is because the different parties involved here, right? You can blame Uber for maybe putting a defective car or defective technology out on the streets. You can blame Volvo, I think, is the car manufacturer. You can blame them. You can blame. So there were two human drivers inside the car, but they were not actively driving. They were just there to ensure that this does not happen, and they too didn't anticipate this, because they said the only time they were alerted about it was when it happened. So they couldn't see it coming. So it's just, who do you blame? Who do you punish? And this is going to be a big thing as we keep moving more towards an autonomous driving society.
It's a real shame when you think about it, because this kind of technology isn't like releasing a new version of iOS, right? It requires a lot of public trust, a big leap of faith. Am I going to feel safe behind the wheel of a car, regardless if the person can take manual control of it? And if there are two drivers there, why is that?
So that's mainly because of regulatory requirements from cities. So you can't have completely self-driving cars on the streets yet, at least in most places. You need to have an engineer in the car just monitoring if everything's going okay with the car.
Okay, so it sounds to me like in this city is really, really early stage, like beta phase of these autonomous cars.
Yeah, I mean, they've been testing for a while now. So I think they've been testing since 2017.
Okay.
And Uber's only had 2 high-profile accidents. One was when they rammed into an SUV, which apparently wasn't the car's fault, which was the human fault. And then this one. But if you look at Waymo and Tesla Autopilot, these have gone with a lot of success in terms of avoiding accidents and avoiding any controversies as such.
Surely there's a way to, if these cars are fitted with these cameras all over, to be able to recall on this footage in court or wherever this is dealt with, and then you'll be able to see exactly what happened, right? You don't have to rely on the comment of the drivers. Surely that's the way to settle this.
Yeah, 100%. Which is why the police chief said that the way it looks as of now is that it seems the lady, she walked in front of the car very abruptly.
Right.
It also makes you question the morality and the ethics of self-driving cars. Because now, let's say in this scenario, the car had 2 possible outcomes, right? It could actually hit the lady, or it could swerve left and drive into a wall. Doing that would kill the passenger in the car, but continuing going straight would kill the lady. How does the car make this ethical decision? And who ultimately programs this decision, right?
Or who has the right to make that
Who has the
decision?
right,
Right. Where does the buck lie? So that brings us to the end of the show today, guys. Thank you very much for watching. I appreciate that we took quite a serious tone at the end. But as always, it's been really, really fun to shoot this episode, and we will see you again in the next one. Take care.